Hey guys, I'm glad I could have a chance to talk with you again. Boy, a lot's been happening recently, and I don't know exactly when this is going to be posted for you to see, but what I'm most mindful of right now has been all of the weather that we've had. And last week was that week where we had the tornadoes, and then the torrential rain that came through really affected us bad. I don't live here in Jonesboro. I make a little commute to come in. And so the town that I live in was not affected by that. We had some winds and there was a scare. Certainly all the sirens and all were going off, but we did not have tornadic just right there with us. Now that happened a couple of towns over. And so each day as I drive back and forth to work, I see all of that. And man, I'm just so thoughtful of those folks. I've had a lot of chance to talk with different people about that. Was in one of those towns yesterday, and somebody told me, and so thankful that from what I've heard, there has been no deaths accounted in this one around here, and we're so thankful for that. But just wanted to come and talk with you. All of that reminded me of a story that we have in the Scriptures. In Mark chapter number 4, we read a time where there's bad weather and Jesus steps up and He does an amazing thing. Previously in Mark chapter 4, Jesus has been teaching. There's been a crowd of people that's been following Him. And so in Mark chapter 4, verse number 33, it says, "And with many parables, Jesus spoke the word to them as they were able to hear it. But without a parable, He did not speak to them." So He says that in the positive and then in the negative. Just said His way of teaching at this time was through parables. But when they were alone, Jesus explained all these things to His closest disciples. Now on that day, when evening come, He said to them, "Let us cross over to the other side." And when they had left the multitude, they took Him along in the boat as He was. And other little boats were also along with Him. And a great windstorm arose, and the waves beat into the boat, so that it was already filling. But He was in the stern, asleep on a pillow. And they woke Him and said to Him, or asked Him, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" And He arose and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. But He said to them, "Why are you so fearful? How is it that you have no faith?" And they feared exceedingly and said to one another, "Who is this, that even the winds and the seas obey Him?" As I read through that, there are some things that I see just making my way through the passage. Notice the reality. Notice just how bad things were. As Jesus and His disciples begin to cross this sea, as they're making their way from one side to the other, this storm comes up, and it's a bad storm. The Scripture says here, it uses the word in my reading from the New King James, that it was a great wind. It was a great storm. And then it also talks about as the winds are pushing the waters, as the rains are coming down. You notice as there's all this splashing, that those splashes are taking the water over into the boat, and the boat is beginning to fill up. And so, that's not a good thing. I'm not a fisherman or don't enjoy those types of things, but we do go up to the lake and we water ski or just hang out on the pontoon and all of that. And so it's just a problem when you start getting water on the boat, and you don't want water in the boat. And so this was a dire circumstance. This was a bad storm. I would say to you, what we've been through here recently has been some bad storms. I believe I heard that one of those was a Category 4 for some of those tornadoes. So undoubtedly, what we've gone through has been some rough weather. So that's how bad it was. But notice as well, as we look on through this, that we find them beginning to question Jesus. When it's so bad and they realize that Jesus is asleep, they go down and they ask Him a question. Aren't you worried about us? Don't you care that we're perishing here? And so don't you care about us at all? Yeah, I've had a lot of people, or in some of the conversations I've had about the storms, people have brought that up. And as I make my way through the hospital seeing our patients, that is one of the questions that a pastor, perhaps you as our doctors and nurses, get asked a lot, is why? Why is this happening to me? In fact, many times people will think, and I've heard people say, what did I do? What did I do that was so bad that this is happening to me? I don't know where those thoughts come from. I worry about that theology. If we think about God as being someone who's just going to get us. Now, that certainly has been the case for some time. In the Old Testament, one of the great stories of the Bible, of the Old Testament, is the story of Job. And Job had a horrible time, lost everything. And so people came to him and they said, Job, the reason these things have happened to you is because you've done something. God is getting you for what you've done. So that theology, that teaching, that thought process has been around for a long time. But boy, I just really struggle with that because I don't see God that way. And I hope you won't either. What I'd like to say to you, what I'd like to remind you is that as bad as the storms were, most of us came through those pretty well. And most of us, our houses were not taken. We may have had some tree limbs down and things like that. But most of us came through those pretty much unscathed. And if that's you, like it is me, we ought to be thankful for that. Perhaps, though, the storm did hit you hard, and maybe you're here and now you've got to put some pieces of the puzzle back together again. Maybe you're wondering, where are you going to stay? How are you going to replace clothes and all those other things? I certainly hope that people will come alongside and you'll find some help in that. I wish the very best for you. But I hope deep down that you don't blame God. I hope that you won't question, was there something that you did? Bad things just happen. We live in a fallen world. Ever since Adam and Eve took of the forbidden fruit, we've had bad things happen in the world since then. And so I don't want you to blame God. And that's something that these people were kind of questioning. Jesus, don't you care? I hope that there won't be any question in your mind at all that God does care. Notice what Jesus does here. After they ask this question, he rouses and he gets up and he just simply speaks. He speaks and he addresses the winds and he addresses the sea, and it becomes calm in that. I would remind you that God is in control of this, of all that we see, and the power that we've seen in some of these natural events has been phenomenal. One of the things that I've seen that really caught my attention as I went through one particular home that was just destroyed, what I noticed was it looked like the winds had just picked up automobiles, some cars and trucks, and had turned them upside down. And they were just sitting there in the driveway, or maybe even in the trees that had come down, and that it was an amazing sight. And so still, and we call it Mother Nature, as powerful as Mother Nature is, God is in control. Jesus stepped out onto that boat. He stepped up and he said to the winds and to the waves, "Peace, be still." And his will, his word was obeyed. I want to remind you that we may question it, we may not see it right now, we may not understand it, but I want you to know that God is in control. And last from this passage, I want you to see they understood this. This really got the attention of all the disciples. It caused them to see Jesus in a different light. Earlier in all this teaching that Jesus had done and the miracles that He had performed and healing people of disease and all of that, they had come to understand that this Jesus is unique. He is special. This is God in the flesh. And so here they see this event where even the winds, even the waves obey Jesus. And they're drawn to Him, seeing His power and seeing His authority. Again, I come to you and issue that to you today. I hope you'll understand that God is in control. I hope that you'll trust and call out to Him. As we prepared for those storms, and as I made my way home, I started hearing that they were talking about some of these storms being close by to where I live. And I said to somebody, I don't wish this on anybody else. I don't want to ask God to direct it to somebody else and miss me. I don't want to be so selfish and all to do that. So really what I want to do is just ask God to diminish some of this, just to take some of the steam out of this. And so maybe in the future when these types of things come along, we'll all do that together. Pray something like that and see God's hand at work. Jesus, just as Jesus in this occasion stepped out and commanded the winds and the waves, and they obeyed. God bless you. If you are suffering through this, again, our condolences to you. Our best of wishes to you. If there's ways that we can help, please reach out and let us know. Thank you and God bless.